So, hello then. Welcome back to another Night of the Movies podcast. I'm Spike Knight, and in these podcasts, I like talking all things movies and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, I'm reviewing Deadpool and Wolverine. So, let's get into it, shall we? For the few quote-unquote fans I have of this channel, and I did quote-unquote there because I don't think I have many fans who watch this channel consistently, but if you are a fan of this channel, you may be sitting there going, why? Why, Spike? Why are you here today reviewing another MCU film when about a year ago, after Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 came out, you said you were done reviewing Marvel movies. You said you were done reviewing the new MCU stuff. And the simple answer is because of Hugh Jackman. If Hugh Jackman didn't come back as Wolverine, I wouldn't be interested in this film whatsoever. But I've been a fan of Hugh Jackman as Wolverine ever since I saw the first X-Men movie years and years and years ago. You know, even the bad X-Men movies that he's in, he's still really good, and I've always enjoyed the X-Men films for the most part. I mean, there's some X-Men films like X-Men Dark Phoenix, X-Men Origins of the Wolverine, and X-Men Apocalypse, and some other ones here and there that I'm not really the biggest fan of. I'm not the biggest fan of X-Men 2, actually. I think it's okay, but I think some people overhype it. I don't think it's nearly as good as some people make it out to be. But the point is, I've been a fan of the X-Men movies for the most part, like the original X-Men, like X-Men Days of Future Past, like X-Men First Class, like the Wolverine, and like Logan. And I wanted to see how the X-Men story continued into this movie, because if you bring the Wolverine back, if you bring Hugh Jackman as Wolverine back, you're going to have a somewhat continuation of the X-Men story. At least that's what I thought was going to happen. And that's not a spoiler for this film, by the way. You know, this review is going to be a mostly spoiler-free review. I'm going to talk about something kind of spoilery a bit later, but I'll give a warning when I do so. But yeah, I'm not giving any spoilers away. I thought that the X-Men story was going to be continued in this film, and I was a fan of the X-Men films overall that released under Fox, under the 20th Century Fox Studios. So that's the biggest reason I wanted to see this film, and also I wanted to see this film because I wanted to have a good time at the cinema. You know, I said Guardians of the Galaxy 3 was the final MCU movie that I was going to review on this channel, because I wanted to end my journey with Marvel on a high. But then I thought, you know what? I miss watching a good, fun superhero movie at the cinema, because it feels like we haven't had that since Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I mean, not many super movies have come out, but the superhero movies that have come out since Guardians of the Galaxy 3 have not been received well, and I have this rule that usually if a film gets a lot of criticism, I'm not going to go and see it at the cinema. So, we haven't seen, at least I haven't seen, a good, fun, you know, super movie at the cinema, and I thought this was going to be a good, fun super movie at the cinema, so that is another reason I went to go and see it. However, I want to say here that I am not a big MCU fan whatsoever. Like, I loved the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise. I thought Guardians of the Galaxy 3 was the weakest of that franchise, but I still enjoyed that movie. And I also really, really like the first Iron Man movie. And I thought the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies were okay. I mean, I think they kind of decreased in quality, and I think the first Ant-Man's okay, though. Whenever I think about the first Ant-Man, I think, oh, it could have been an Edgar Wright film, and we're this close to it being an Edgar Wright film, and it wasn't. So I haven't really been able to rewatch Ant-Man since I knew it was almost an Edgar Wright film, which would have been a dream for me for Edgar Wright to direct a super movie, but that's neither here or there. With the exception of those films, I have not really liked many MCU films in the past. I've enjoyed watching them, but more often than not, they make me feel empty, and there's nothing about them which I really like, you know? Not saying other people shouldn't, not saying that at all. If you love the MCU, that's great, I'm super jealous of you, but personally, the MCU doesn't really work for me, with the exception of a couple of movies. And so I was going into this film hoping that it wasn't necessarily going to feel like your average MCU film. Fortunately, I was kind of wrong. But I'll talk about that in more detail later on in this review. But also, I want to mention my opinion. I want to talk about my opinion on the previous two Deadpool movies before this one. I am not a fan of the first two Deadpool films. They're just not for me. I don't hate them. On paper, I should actually really like them. The meta jokes, the self-referential stuff, they're full of comedy, they poke fun at the superhero genre. On paper, they sound like the superhero movies which were made for me, you know? But there's something about them, I just can't get into them. And I do think it's Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool. I've never really been a fan of Ryan Reynolds. I don't hate the actor whatsoever. In fact, when you see him in interviews, I think he seems like a wonderful person. He seems like a really genuine guy, and he seems passionate about making good films. Now, that being said, whenever, not all the time, but a lot of the time when I see him in a movie, he often rubs me up the wrong way. I enjoyed him in If, which came out earlier this year, but a lot of the times I've seen Ryan Reynolds in films, I'm like, I don't really like what you're trying to do. It just, all of his performances that I've seen him give, and granted I haven't seen all of his movies, but all the performances I've seen him give seem to be a variation on his performance as Deadpool. And I think that's really where my issue with Ryan Reynolds as an actor. Again, he seems like a wonderful person, but I think my issue of him as a performer is from Deadpool, because I never really liked the Deadpool character. He's obnoxious, he's annoying, and yes, in the Deadpool movies they poke fun at the fact, and they do it again here in Deadpool and Wolverine, that he's annoying and he's obnoxious and people don't really like him too much. But it's still, just because you poke fun at it doesn't mean it's not there still, if you follow me. He's still annoying in those movies, even though they say he's annoying, because that actually makes me find him more annoying. So I've never really been a fan of the Deadpool character, and the previous two Deadpool movies are tonally all over the place for me, and I can't get into them. And the meta jokes should work for me so much more than they actually do, but I think it's Deadpool 2. I think it's in the big finale of Deadpool 2, when Deadpool's about to have this big CGI fight. You know, this big CGI fight with the supervillain in that movie, and he turns to the camera, he breaks the fourth wall, and by the way, there are far too many breaking the fourth wall moments in the first two Deadpool movies, but it is what it is. Anyway, he breaks the fourth wall towards the end, just before this big fight in Deadpool 2, and he goes, oh look, we're about to have a big CGI superhero fight, and I'm like, oh wow, they're going to actually not have a big CGI superhero fight. And then they do, and it just makes the joke feel inconsequential, and it doesn't make the joke funny, because the joke would be funnier, the joke would just be funny, wouldn't it be funnier? It would just be funny if they didn't have the big CGI fight, but they said that line anyway, and so they do have this big CGI fight. And yes, the Deadpool movies, you know, they feel like they're making fun of the superhero genre, but in the end, they're just, at least for me, generic superhero movies. You know, they try and make fun of what they're doing, but they end up just doing the thing that they're trying to make fun of, at least in my opinion. So I'm not a big fan of the previous two Deadpool movies. But something that did have me hopeful about this Deadpool movie, Deadpool 3, aka Deadpool and Wolverine, is the fact that we have a different director from the previous two Deadpool movies. Sean Levy, who did not direct the previous two Deadpool movies, but who has worked with Ryan Reynolds in the past on such movies as Free Guy, which I didn't really enjoy, and The Adam Project, which I did enjoy. I mean, I didn't love, I didn't think it was brilliant or anything, but I watched that on Netflix yesterday, actually, in preparation for this movie, to see what Sean Levy's directional style was like, because I wanted to re-familiarise myself with it, because I haven't seen Free Guy in a while. I don't really see many Sean Levy films in a while. I haven't seen much of his work in a while, so I wanted to re-familiarise myself with his style of directing. So I watched The Adam Project yesterday, and I enjoyed that film. It was heartfelt, it was fun to watch, and it had some really great needle drops in there. So yeah, I liked The Adam Project. And with Sean Levy directing, I had hope, because Sean Levy has also directed the Night at the Museum films, which came out, back in the day, back when I was at a much younger age, and I enjoyed watching those films as a kid. I'm not sure if I would like them now, because I remember watching a bit of Night at the Museum 2, The Secret of the Tomb, I think that's what that one's called, it's something like that. Anyway, I remember watching a bit of Night at the Museum 2 on Channel 4 on broadcast TV about a year ago now, around about that, and I only watched about 10 minutes when I was like, no, this is not working for me at the age I'm at now. But I remember watching them at a much younger age, and I enjoyed them. So, I enjoyed the Night at the Museum films, which Sean Levy directed. I also enjoyed Sean Levy's work on Stranger Things, one of the biggest TV shows to come out of the past decade. He directed some cracking episodes of Stranger Things, particularly in the last series of Stranger Things. He directed the episode, the running up that hill episode. The running up that hill, the Kate Bush song, the episode which made that song the phenomenon that it ended up being. He directed the episode, and I thought that was one of the best directed episodes of Stranger Things, period. So, with Sean Levy coming into the director's chair for this film, I had hope. Because although I don't think Sean Levy is a brilliant director, he often makes fun, heartfelt, and sort of roller coaster ride type movies, and that's what I was hoping this film was going to be. I wasn't going into this film expecting a masterpiece. I wasn't going into this film expecting the best film of the year. I was just going in to get a fun roller coaster ride of a movie. Hopefully enjoy watching Wolverine's character arc continue, because that was another big thing. I was wondering how they're going to continue Wolverine's character arc after the character had the perfect farewell in Logan, which came out in 2017. That movie gave Wolverine the perfect ending. So I was like, okay, Hugh Jackman's agreed to come back. And they keep saying in interviews, Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman keep saying in interviews that they're not tainting the legacy of Logan. They love that movie. I mean, I think Ryan Reynolds has called it a masterpiece about 1,000 times now. So, because Hugh Jackman has agreed to come back, I'm thinking, okay, maybe there's something here. I wanted to see what they did with the Wolverine character after Logan, because after Logan, it seemed like they, pretty much finished on Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, and they gave a perfect arc to that character. So yeah, that interested me, and I just, like I said, I wanted to go into this movie and have a really fun time. I'm not a big fan of the Deadpool character, but, I had hope. And so, earlier today, I went to go and see this movie. And honestly, I thought it was fine. Now, just before people come at me and say, oh my god, I can't believe you hated the movie. No, I didn't hate the film. I won't say that. I didn't hate it. But my problem with this film is that it just feels like an average MCU movie at the end of the day. And I can totally see that being the reason why some people absolutely love it. And if that's the case, if you're somebody who watched Deadpool and Wolverine and you absolutely adored it, I am jealous. I'm so jealous. And I get it. And I don't want to take that away from you whatsoever. Too many reviewers just want you to agree with them. And I thrive on debate. I thrive on people having a different opinion than me. And if you did love, if you really enjoyed Deadpool and Wolverine, that's awesome. I really don't want to take that away from you. And if you're an MCU fan and you've been wanting that MCU feel back, I can completely understand why you would watch Deadpool and Wolverine and feel like that classic MCU feel is back. But for me, I think the reason it didn't work was because it felt just like a normal MCU movie. And I personally prefer MCU films that don't just feel like your average MCU film, that actually stand out amongst the other ones, that do something different, that feel like they actually have a story to tell and are not just setting up something that's some bigger thing that's going to happen in the future. And I couldn't help but feel like this movie didn't really have a story to tell. I think Ryan Reynolds got his good mate, because they seem like best friends. I think Ryan Reynolds got his good mate, or, great mate, Hugh Jackman, to come back as Wolverine. I think he finally managed to convince him, but he didn't think he would. And I think the writers tried to incorporate him into this film, but they didn't really know what to do, because I didn't really get what story this film was trying to tell. This story was lacking, and I mean lacking with a capital L for me, with this movie. There wasn't much story to get invested in, and the emotion felt thrown in. It felt shoehorned. And something Sean Levy, who has directed this film, is what he said, does such a great job at in the movies and in the TV stuff he's directed, is having a strong beating heart in the stuff that he's directed and keeping that heart there, evident throughout the film, and making these heartfelt moments in these films feel so much more heartfelt than they have any right to be. But I felt that the emotional moments in this film didn't really work as well as they should have. They worked to a degree, and I say a degree, I'm being kind there, because they really don't work that well, and they feel thrown in there because they don't feel earned, they don't feel justified. And I really wanted this film to make me feel emotional, to actually make me feel in those scenes where Deadpool and Wolverine are sacrificing themselves. Not to go into too many spoilers there, but it's a superhero movie. There's going to be stuff where they're going up against the big bad villain, and they do in this movie. And I wanted those moments where you think the superheroes are going to lose to be far more impactful and far more emotional than they actually were, but they weren't. It felt the emotion was pushed aside for the jokes and for the comedy and for the gore, but that doesn't really work if the emotion and the narrative aren't there, at least for me. And I felt like the narrative was, again, lacking, and I felt that the emotion was just thrown in there, random scenes, and didn't feel earned. I'll tell you what the most emotional part of the film was for me, and this is a mild spoiler. This is the only spoilery sort of detail that I'm going to be talking about in this review. So, spoiler here, although again, it's not a big spoiler. It's not about any of the cameos in this film. It's just about something in the credits. It's not even about the film itself, really. But in the credits of this movie, there's a tribute to the superhero films that came out under 20th Century Fox. The X-Men movies, the Ben Affleck Daredevil movie, the Fantastic Four movies, and I don't know if there's anything else. Blade as well, I think that was under 20th Century Fox. So there's a tribute to those movies in the end credits of this film, whilst the credits is playing. And whilst this tribute is playing, you get the song, Good Riddance, Time of Your Life by Green Day playing, which is such a beautiful piece of music. And I've never, I wasn't the biggest fan of the Fox superhero films. I enjoy the X-Men films quite a lot, but other than the X-Men films, I didn't love the Fox superhero movies. But I was watching that tribute at the end credits of this movie, and I was feeling quite emotional. I was actually getting a little teary. I was like, wow, this is hitting me in the feels more than anything else in the film itself did. Something in the credits, something that's not really about this movie whatsoever, something that happened in the credits I found more emotional than the film itself, which pretty much tells you how I felt about the film. I mean, listen, give credit where credit's due. I didn't hate the film. I didn't really dislike it. It's got some entertaining moments. The action sequences, I think, are well done for the most part. Alright? There's one big action sequence in the film where it's just like Sean Levy became obsessed with shaky cam. It's like, shaky cam here, shaky cam there, shaky cam there, shaky cam there. Whoa! Big action sequence. Well, let's shake the camera. Honestly, there was a bit too much shaky cam in one of the action sequences in this film. And if you've seen the film, you will, I'd be surprised if you didn't know which action sequence I was talking about, because the camera couldn't stop shaking. But the action is done well for the most part. The opening sequence was entertaining in the film. I actually enjoyed the first half an hour. I was sat there in the first half an hour of the film thinking, you know what? this might be the first. This might be like the, I don't know, 5th or 4th MCU movie that I've actually really enjoyed. Of course, that didn't end up being the way, because as soon as you get into all the multiverse logistics of the movie, I just became, the film became tiring to me, because multiverse has not worked to me in the superhero movies I've seen it being used in the past, and it does not work again for me here. You know what? They're going on all the multiverse stuff, and I just can't help but think, why? They start making fun of all the multiverse stuff that Marvel's been doing ever since Avengers Endgame. But I couldn't help but think, instead of making fun of all this multiverse stuff, instead of having all these meta, self-referential jokes, why don't you actually try and improve on the multiverse stuff? And I don't think this film really did that. It's just another multiverse film where the one character dies in one world. Guess what? They're going to be alive in another world. Like, I'm not going to mention which character they talk about, but they talk about some characters that have died in this world where the Wolverine comes from, that we meet in this movie, that we follow for the most part in this film. And I was like, well, it doesn't matter if they died in this world. They can just go to another world and those same characters are going to be there. It takes away from the story, it takes away from the emotional beats in the film, because when they're talking about deaths of certain characters, I just can't help but think, yeah, but in another world, listen, they're just going to be there. It's just an issue, a big issue I have with multiverse, and I thought this film was actually going to somehow improve on that, but it doesn't really. It doesn't offer up any solutions for the multiverse problem that I think the MCU and other non-MCU movies, such as The Flash, have faced over the past couple of years. Honestly, super movies in general just need to get away from multiverse. Stop going on about it. And listen, they make jokes about it in this film. They make jokes basically saying what I just said. But they don't get away from it at the same time. It's like, what? Stop with all this multiverse shenanigans. This film doesn't improve on that, and it's still another multiverse film that's just doing all the same sort of stuff that we've seen Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Meandering, as I like to call that movie. It's just doing the same sort of stuff that movie did, and I'm just, I'm sick of multiverse. Absolutely sick of it, and yet this movie focuses on it so much. I get why it does, but I didn't think the multiverse stuff was done well in the film. And yes, this film has cameos, and I'm not going to spoil what the cameos are, and I thought they were fine. I thought the cameos could have been far more effective, because I've been hearing all these people calling this film a tribute to the superhero movies that were made under 20th Century Fox before Disney bought 20th Century Fox. And I'm like, okay, if that's the case, then I'm expecting to see certain characters. And again, try not to give anything away, but if you don't want to know anything about this movie, please do turn away now. I was disappointed by the cameo choices in this film. I was disappointed what the characters they chose to use from previous Fox superhero movies, because if you want to make the cameos super effective, why did you choose those characters? One of the characters I'm pretty sure has never been in a Fox movie before, and the most impactful, the most meaningful of the superhero characters they decided to bring back, I'm pretty sure they spoiled in a trailer for this movie, which came out about a week ago now. So, you know, well done the Marvel marketing team. You got it out there that probably your most meaningful cameo in this movie, well, you already spoiled it. So I'm like, that bothered me. The cameo stuff bothered me because I thought it could have been done better. I thought the cameos could have been far more effective, but instead it felt like they were played up for jokes, and it was more like, but who did you play in what movie? Oh, right, okay. Why are you back? I didn't get the point of the cameos. Really? Like, they played a role in the narrative, but I don't know. I thought the cameos could have been more effective. Could have been far far more effective. And again, there were things I liked about the film. You know, there are some really great needle drops in there. And there is some stuff which I really enjoyed watching, but for a film which feels like it's poking fun at all the problems Marvel has, it doesn't seem to get away from those problems though. And some of the jokes really didn't work at the same time. Like, there were so many jokes in this film, and at one point I just wanted to say to Ryan Reynolds, who was credited as a co-writer on this film and who plays Deadpool, you know, I just wanted to say to him, tone down on the jokes. Please just tone down on the jokes. Some of them are working, but some of them are just put so in your face. And I mean, I found Deadpool annoying in Deadpool 1 and Deadpool 2. I found him so much more annoying in this movie. I mean, there are certain scenes where it feels like Deadpool is just doing a scene and playing up for laughs, and Wolverine's just there in the background. I don't think the Deadpool and Wolverine aspect of this film actually worked as well as they wanted it to. And again, if you think it did, then that's awesome. I don't want to take that away from you. If you watched this film and thought that Deadpool and Wolverine were the ultimate pairing, then that's awesome. Personally, I didn't think that pairing worked as well as I was hoping it would, because, I mean, Wolverine's such a more... Wolverine's a very different character to Deadpool, you know? A very, 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 very different character. And I feel putting him in a movie with Deadpool, yeah, wasn't the best decision, personally. You know? And I didn't feel the need to bring I didn't feel they need to bring Deadpool back. No. I didn't feel they needed to bring Wolverine back, because he follows the same story beats that he had in Logan. There's nothing that different than we've already seen Wolverine go through that he goes through in this movie. It felt like, again, I said before, Hugh Jackman did, you know, decided to come back as Wolverine, and they tried to make a movie around the fact that he decided to come back, but I didn't feel Wolverine needed to be back in this movie, and I didn't feel they had the best character arc for him. I would have much preferred if they ended Wolverine's character arc with Logan, just left it there, because here they do taint Logan. You know, they do sort of what's the word that I'm looking for? They make the ending of Logan feel a little worthless. You know, and that was something I was really hoping they weren't going to do, because Logan had such an impactful ending, and I feel that impactful ending from Logan is kind of lost now, personally. You know, and the colour feels taken out of this movie, you know, and that sounds like quite a small thing. I'm interested in the way a movie is directed. I'm interested in a director's style, and Sean Levy, in his previous directional efforts, has this vibrance in colour when it comes to his movies. You know, I didn't enjoy Free Guy, but that is a movie full of colour, quite literally. Same with the Adam Project. But when you get to this movie, it feels like the colour's been drained out, and it has this Marvel look about it. This look that so many of the Marvel films had, where the colour's being drained out and there's this washed out look to it, and it makes the film feel generic. I would have preferred this film to be just, again, full of all these... I would have preferred this film to have all these colours, you know, and that sounds like a small thing, but when I watched Sean Levy's other films in the past, all the stuff that he directed, it's all full of colour, and I wanted that colour when it came to this film, especially when you've got such colourful costumes on screen, and I felt that the colour was missing. I felt that the film had this washed out look to it, like so many Marvel films do, and I didn't like that. I really didn't like that. And there was other things which I didn't enjoy as well. You know, the comedy didn't work for me for the most part. Some of the comedy did, but I'd say about 75% of the comedy didn't. A lot of the comedy was just like, yeah, I get the point, you're making fun of Marvel, you're making fun of the MCU, but like, you're in it now. And you're making fun of it, but you're not trying to improve it. So, you know, a lot of the comedy, I felt... A lot of the comedy just went over my head, and I didn't feel really worked. And comedy is a very subjective thing, so if the comedy works for you, super happy about that. But I felt that the comedy, for the most part, again, about 25% of the comedy worked for me, which is more than the percentage of comedy that worked for me in Deadpool 1 and Deadpool 2. But a lot of the comedy just, I was cringing at. I did not enjoy a lot of the comedy in this movie. And there were so many moments where I felt like it could have been so much better than it actually was if they had a story to tell. But I didn't feel it had a story to tell. And that's why I thought it was fine, because I was entertained by this movie in the cinema. I was entertained by certain chunks of the movie in the cinema. I liked the fact that it actually looks like they used real built sets for this movie instead of just constantly using green screen. And they actually shot on location in certain parts of this film. Like, thank God, because that's something superhero movies and particularly MCU movies don't do a lot of. So I did admire that. There are some needle drops which are great, and I can totally get why people would absolutely love this movie. But for me, it just felt like another Marvel film, and I was really hoping it wouldn't. And I didn't think it needed Wolverine. I didn't think they needed to bring back Wolverine. I think that was a wrong choice. And you know, there's a joke made in the movie, and again, this isn't really a big spoiler because I think it's been revealed in one of the trailers, but there's a joke made in the movie about how Deadpool says, oh, they're gonna keep Hugh Jackman playing Wolverine until he's 90, and I do think that's going to be the case. They make the joke, but I do think it's going to be the case, and again, that's sort of my problem with the jokes in this movie. They keep making these jokes, but then, you know, by the time you get to the third act, they still run into all the multiverse problems. And yes, they make the joke that, oh yeah, this is another MCU movie and all that sort of stuff, but then it just become like another MCU film with a pretty forgettable villain, with a pretty forgettable narrative that doesn't really amount to things in the grand scheme of things, with action sequences but that don't really mean anything, because a lot of the action sequences in this movie are Deadpool and Wolverine stabbing each other, or, you know, I was about to spoil something there, but I shouldn't. I stopped myself before I spoiled something huge. But a lot of the action sequences are okay, there's one big action sequence in the film which has been, you know, teased out in the trailers, where Deadpool and Wolverine have a fight. They fight twice in this film, but these are characters which both heal as soon as they get stabbed, so none of them are going to die. Neither of them are going to die. And so I'm watching these action sequences, I'm like, what are the stakes? What are the stakes? And I felt that with so much in this film. What are the stakes? If a character dies in this world, listen, multiverse is a thing, and you're emphasising multiverse a lot in this movie, so go to another world and get them back. You know, it's just... it was like, I was watching this film thinking, if only it was so much fun to watch, and if only it wasn't getting dragged down by the Marvel of it all, and the multiverse of it all, but it was. You know, at one point, the film feels too long. It's about 2 hours and 10 minutes, and it feels about 20 minutes too long, in my opinion. And towards the end of the film, Deadpool breaks the fourth wall, which he does far too many times in this movie, in my opinion. Anyway, breaks the fourth wall for about the 500th time, and says, oh, don't worry, we're on the home stretch. Just to let the viewers know, like, we know the film's gone on too long. But then the film goes on for another 20 minutes! And it's like, you make the joke, but it still doesn't mean anything if you don't, you know, it doesn't mean anything when the joke is actually what happens, is what I'm trying to say. And it's like, so many times I'm watching Marvel movies, and the final act is stretched, and just feels way too long, and that feels the same in this movie. And things happen in the final act, and I'm like, why is this happening? Sure, it's cool to watch, but why? What is the point of this? And I still don't get that. You know? It just comes back down to Multiverse. If you're going to make fun of Multiverse, actually do it in a way which tries to improve on it at the same time. And I don't think this movie did. You know, James Mangold, who directed Logan, the last time we saw Wolverine, he did an interview recently, not regarding this film, it was regarding his new Bob Dylan biopic, which comes out later this year. He did an interview recently. He spoke about why he doesn't like multiverse stories. And he said this: I don't like multi-movie universe building. I think it's the enemy of storytelling. He's perfect. Yeah, that is right on point, you know? The death of storytelling, as he continues. It's more interesting to people the way the Legos connect than the way the story works in front of us. For me, the goal always, what is unique about this film and these characters, not making you think about some other movie or some Easter egg or something else, which is all an intellectual act, not an emotional act. You want the movie to work on an emotional level, and he's right on the money. You know, I was reading this article which came out from the Hollywood Reporter where he said this on the bus on the way back from seeing this movie, and I'm like, yeah, he's on the money. And this is the guy who directed Logan. You know, he knows what's up with this movie, and he can tell he's not really happy that Wolverine's been brought back to life. And I can't blame him, because this does undermine Logan, in my opinion. That's the word I was looking for earlier. It undermines Logan, you know? And it does what James Mangold was saying. It just becomes like an intellectual act. That's what this film does become. An intellectual act. It's all about referencing Easter eggs and things that happened in a previous Fox superhero movie, whether it's a Fantastic Four movies, the Ben Affleck Daredevil movie, or the X-Men movies. It's all about referencing those films, whilst it should have just been about telling its own story and not just about Easter eggs, multiverse, Deadpool breaking the fourth wall and making fun of the MCU. And actually should have been improving on the MCU in the state it's in right now. Because honestly, I don't know where the MCU goes after this movie. You know? Particularly the multiverse side of the MCU, which it sounds like it's going to be about for at least the next 3 years. You know? It sounds like it's at least going to be about till Avengers 6 or whichever Avengers movie is going to be, which I think is meant to come out in like 2027, so it's going to be about for a good couple more years now, and I'm a bit like, let's just get over, let's get past it, you know? There's no good stories that come out of Multiverse, and this movie is yet again evidence of that. But there were parts of the film I liked, and I didn't think it was awful. I didn't think it was that bad. I didn't think it was that good, you know? And so, all in all, I'm going to say that Deadpool and Wolverine, I'm going to say that it's I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. I give films a 5 out of 10 if I just think they are fine. And I just found this movie to be fine. Listen, I didn't hate it because I didn't have that much emotional attachment to it. I mean, yeah, I've got an emotional attachment to Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, but honestly, I don't know. For some reason, I didn't really in this film. There was something missing. Like, I felt like, you know, I didn't have that same emotional attachment to him as Wolverine because I just couldn't stop thinking, you're back as, when I was watching this movie, you're back as Wolverine. Why? Why can't you just leave it in Logan? But, you know, I've touted on with that point far too long now. And I've been going on far too long about this film. This will probably be the last MCU movie I mean, I said that about a year ago, but I do think it's going to be the case now. Apart from Spider-Man 4, Tom Holland's Spider-Man 4, which I am vaguely interested in, this will probably be the last MCU movie I watch. Because I'm not the target audience, you know? And I thought I was going to have a fun sort of roller coaster ride with this film, but just, it feels like they were throwing a lot at the wall and they didn't really know what was going to stick, but they continued to throw stuff anyway because they wanted it to be this fun multiverse movie full of shenanigans that makes fans of the previous X-Men movies and Fantastic Four movies and the Daredevil movie happy. And the Blade movies happy. But I do not think they did a good job. It feels like it's catered just for fans of those movies, because I don't really see the general moviegoer enjoying this movie, but perhaps I'm wrong. Perhaps I'm very wrong there. But again, going back into what I said before, the most emotional part of the film for me was something that was happening during the credits, and it had really nothing to do with the film. So there you go. That pretty much sums up everything you need to know about the film. I think you need to know about my opinion on this movie. But again, if you enjoyed it, super happy for you. Wish that I did as well. Wish I was on that same boat as you. But yeah, it didn't have a story to tell, so it didn't have a story for me to get invested in. And that's, you know, that's pretty much all I have to say about Deadpool and Wolverine. And so, all in all, I'm going to say that Deadpool and Wolverine is a 5 out of 10 from me. Anyway guys, that's it for today's podcast. If you have seen Deadpool and Wolverine, please let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section below. Maybe you loved it, or maybe you didn't really enjoy it and you felt similar to me. Whatever your thoughts are, please let me know in the comment section below. And as always, thank you for watching or listening to this podcast. And if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like and subscribe on this podcast. I look forward to many more podcasts coming very soon on this channel. And I just lost my train of thought on my outro. Thank you so much for watching, as I've already said, and I will see you guys again soon. Bye for now. Bye.